All right, so welcome to the deep dive. And today we are diving deep into the world of modern art.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah, and we got some pretty interesting stuff from a listener, including some pretty scathing criticism of modern art. So I think this will be interesting.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, buckle up. I think this is going to be a wild ride.
Okay.
So we want to explore the arguments that this listener has brought up and some of the examples that they've shared with us. See if just maybe we can kind of make some sense of it all.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, so right off the bat, they're really wrestling with this question of like, what even is good art and who gets to decide that? And I think that's a question that's plagued artists and art critics for
definitely
decades.
Yeah, it's a big one.
And, they just jump right in saying that much of what's called modern art just lacks skill, meaning, and even objective value.
Okay.
And they use some pretty wild examples. I mean, we're talking like unmade beds, a rock that sold for millions.
I've heard of that one.
Yeah, and I'll spare you the details on this one, but there's even an example involving cans of feces.
Okay, well, that's definitely designed to get your attention.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's going to make you question the whole system.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to remember that shocking or unconventional art, that's not new.
No.
Like every revolution in our history, like you think about the Renaissance or Impressionism, those were met with so much resistance at the time.
Like people hated Impressionism at first.
Totally. And it's because those artists, they were breaking the mold, challenging the status quo, and ultimately they changed the way we see the world.
That's true. But I mean, the source also goes on to say that today's art world is more about elitism than genuine artistic expression.
Okay.
And they argue that galleries, auction houses, and wealthy collectors, they're all kind of in cahoots. They're promoting these obscure works that nobody understands just to feel superior to the average person. Like they're in this exclusive club that most of us just aren't invited to.
Exactly. It's this idea of exclusion that's really central to their critique. And I think it makes sense when you look at the prices of some of these pieces.
Right.
Like you mentioned that $10 million rock, or there was that untitled painting that sold for $46 million.
Oh my gosh.
Like, is artistic merit really driving that market?
I mean, look, I can appreciate abstract art, but a rock for $10 million.
Right,
I mean, that's where I start to get a little skeptical.
Totally.
And the source uses this word obscurantism.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
A mouthful.
Yeah, and they're basically saying that, sometimes the art world uses all this complex language, all this theory, just to make something seem more profound than it actually is.
Like more important than it is.
Yeah, is it actually brilliant?
Right.
Or is it just smoke and mirrors?
Yeah, and I think that's a valid question, because if you need a degree in art theory to understand a piece, is it truly brilliant? Or is it just a way to inflate the value and exclude people who aren't in the know?
Yeah, sometimes I go to a gallery and I feel like I'm supposed to like something.
Yes.
Just because it's in this fancy gallery.
Exactly.
And the critics are raving about it. But what if I just don't get it?
Yeah. What if you just don't connect with it? And that's that feeling of being out of the loop.
Yeah.
Like you're not part of the club. That's exactly what the source is getting at.
Yeah. And then they kind of take this idea of elitism and they connect it to this broader push for social justice narratives in modern art.
Okay.
And they're basically saying that they think modern art has become way too focused on pushing certain political ideologies.
Okay.
Particularly those aligned with the far left. And they even give specific examples of art pieces and museum exhibits that they feel are more about propaganda than artistic expression.
So this is where we get into this tricky territory of separating art from its message.
Right.
Can art be a tool for social commentary?
Right.
Absolutely.
I think it can.
But the source is raising the question.
Yeah.
At what point does it stop being art and become something else entirely?
That's a good question. And it kind of leads us to this other point that they're bringing up, which is this worry that this emphasis on subjective interpretation and social justice themes is now spilling over into other areas of culture, like film and music.
Okay.
They're concerned that artistic quality is now taking a backseat to representation and political messaging.
Yeah, it's a valid concern because if we're prioritizing representation over quality, do we risk diluting the very standards that define excellence in art?
Yeah.
Or, on the other hand, are those standards themselves just a product of a system that has historically excluded certain voices and perspectives.
Yeah, that is a really complex issue.
Yeah.
And the source seems to long for a time when there were more objective standards for beauty and art. And they even share the story about art students being taught that believing in objective beauty is basically cultural fascism.
Wow, that's a powerful statement.
It is.
And I think it speaks to this larger cultural shift away from universal truths and towards a more relativistic worldview.
Yeah.
Like the source seems to really lament this shift.
Right.
They're saying that it leads to a sense of nihilism and a lack of shared values in art and beyond.
Yeah.
This is that's
a big claim.
Yeah, it is a big claim.
Yeah. It does feel like we're at this point where, like, you can't say anything is objectively good or bad. It's all subjective. Like, there's no room for standards anymore.
It's interesting because this is like a very old argument.
Is it?
Oh, yeah. Like every time there's a big shift in artistic styles, you always have these critics who are like, oh, this is the death of art.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like we've lost all our standards. Everything's going downhill. But what if these periods of upheaval are actually necessary for art to like evolve and stay relevant?
I mean, that's a good point. Like maybe the source is just being a little too nostalgic for the past.
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
And kind of romanticizing this idea of like art being all about technical skill.
Right.
And not about pushing boundaries.
Yeah. And it's worth remembering that even in those periods with those strict standards, those standards were always being challenged.
Right.
And eventually overturned.
Yeah.
Think about the Renaissance.
Okay.
It was all about like a return to classical forms, these ideals of beauty.
Right.
But even then you had artists like Michelangelo who were pushing those boundaries, creating these works that were both beautiful and kind of unsettling.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, even within those traditional standards, there was still room for like individuality and innovation.
It wasn't just about blindly following the rules.
Right. And maybe that's kind of what's missing from this critique.
Maybe.
You're so focused on the negative aspects of modern art.
Yeah, like the shock value.
Yeah, the shock value, the political messaging.
The rejection of beauty.
Yeah.
That they kind of miss all this incredible diversity and ingenuity that's happening.
That's true. To be fair to the source, though, they do say that not all modern art is bad.
Okay.
And they point to a few examples of modern art that they find interesting or visually appealing, even if they don't fully understand the meaning.
And that's a crucial point, I think.
Yeah.
Like art appreciation is a personal journey.
Right.
What speaks to one person might leave another person cold.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Totally.
Like the beauty of art in all its forms is that it invites you to like have your own personal interpretation and exploration.
It takes the pressure off.
Totally.
Of having to understand everything.
Yeah. Sometimes you can just like let the art wash over you.
Yeah.
And see what it makes you feel.
Yeah. And what thoughts it evokes.
Exactly. You don't need a degree in art history to have a valid response to a piece of art.
Right.
Trust your instincts.
Yeah.
Trust your gut reaction.
So where does that leave us then?
Okay.
Like what should our listener take away from this? They've given us this very specific critique of modern art.
Yeah.
Where do they go from here?
I think the most important thing is don't let one person's opinion, no matter how strongly worded, dictate your own experience of art.
Don't let it shut down your curiosity.
Exactly. Use it as a springboard.
Yeah.
Like the source material, while being critical, has actually given us a lot to think about.
It has.
Like it's pointed out these potential pitfalls of the modern art world.
Like the elitism.
Yeah, the elitism. The obscure language that excludes outsiders.
Yeah.
But we also have to remember art is subjective.
Right.
Like what one person finds meaningless, another person might find profoundly moving.
Totally.
So it's okay to not like everything you see in a museum or gallery.
Yeah.
It's okay to be confused, to be challenged.
Yeah.
Even to be like repelled by a piece of art.
Right.
Like those reactions are all part of the experience.
Yeah. The key is to just engage with it.
Yeah.
Ask questions.
Think critically.
Yeah.
About what you're seeing and how it makes you feel. And maybe in that process, you'll discover something new about yourself and the world around you.
I love that. This has been a really interesting deep dive.
Yeah.
You know, we started with this critique that was like, oh, modern art is bad. But like the more we've talked about it, the more nuanced it's become.
Absolutely.
There are so many different perspectives to consider.
And I think the source, even with its strong opinions, has actually done us a favor.
Yeah.
By pushing us to examine our own assumptions.
Right. Like, what do we value?
Yeah.
It speaks to us.
Yeah. What do we think is good?
Yeah. And how do we like navigate this world where the standards are constantly changing?
Yeah. It's a moving target.
It really is. And, you know, before this deep dive, I have to admit, I kind of avoided modern art museums.
Oh, really?
I felt intimidated intimidated. Yeah. Like I wouldn't get it.
That's how a lot of people feel.
Yeah, but now I'm actually kind of curious to go see some of this stuff for myself.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and just like experience it without feeling like I need to have all the answers.
Exactly. And just remember, there's no right or wrong way to experience art.
Right.
So just let go of the pressure to understand everything and just allow yourself to feel, to react, to question.
Yeah.
You might be surprised.
You know what I think I'm taking away from this is that maybe the problem isn't modern art itself.
Okay.
But the way we talk about it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like if we get too bogged down in the jargon and the theory, it's easy to feel excluded. Totally. But if we just focus on the experience, the emotions, the way art makes us see the world differently, then I think there's something there for everyone.
I completely agree, because art at its core is about connection.
Yeah.
It's about the artist connecting with their own emotions and ideas and then sharing that with the world.
Sharing it.
And then it's about us, the viewers, connecting with that expression, finding meaning.
Finding meaning,
and resonance in someone else's creative vision.
That's beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the wild world of modern art, what's like the one question you would leave our listener with?
I think the source's central question still lingers. If anything can be art, does art itself lose its meaning?
Ooh.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, it is.
And it's worth grappling with.
Yeah.
As those boundaries blur and definitions become more fluid.
Right.
What remains essential to the experience of art?
That's a great question.
I don't know the answer.
I don't either.
But I think it's for each of us to discover.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect place to end it.
I agree.
So thanks for joining us for this deep dive into modern art.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time.